All right, Geordie. So at the last federal election, we saw the Liberal Party suffer a pretty monumental defeat.
Yes.
However, it appears they have not seemed to have learnt from that defeat. They have not backtracked and looked at their mistakes. Instead, they seem to have pursued a policy, and it seems like they're almost aiming for net zero seats at the next election. Do you think that'd be correct?
I think so, James.
Yeah.
I think the coalition have tried to do some soul searching, and they're going to be searching for a while because I think there's a lack of a soul there for sure.
Yeah, collectively.
Definitely. Susan Ley obviously won the leadership. She's representing the moderates in the party. They see that to gain victory and get back into power, they need to kind of capture moderate Australia. The right side of the party itself thinks that they need to go for more of a Trump-style politics, a real divisive, obviously scrapping net zero now, obviously really targeting immigration policies and just wading back into the culture wars because they see that as their way to victory.
Of course. So no actual kind of beneficial policies, essentially just engage in the culture war.
Definitely, for sure. And it's funny because they always talk about a party of, they're not guided by kind of extreme ideologies, like the kind of the woke green ideology per se.
Of the Labor Party, of the Communist Labor Party.
No, but they really are. The right wing of the party is very much guided by ideology because in order to get back into power, I heard a figure just earlier today that they only hold, I think it's 9 of 88 metropolitan seats in the whole of Australia.
Oh, goodness, wow.
Yeah. And so I'm pretty sure they need to win, I think it's between 10 and 20 seats in order to get back into power. And, waging culture wars is not going to achieve that.
Of course, because obviously we've seen the metropolitan kind of inner city and suburban vote shift a lot more kind of conclusively towards Labor.
Yeah.
Obviously, as Labor have kind of progressively become closer to the centre.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of negates the necessity for that more moderate centrist.
Yeah, and the Tills and independents. Like the Tills really do represent a lot of the conservative tendencies of the Liberal Party or the coalition, except they care about climate change.
Yeah.
And so we've seen now the Nationals about a fortnight ago came out and scrapped net zero commitments. And then the Liberal Party just the other day were dragged kicking and screaming, well, some of them were, in order to dump net zero ambitions as well.
Yeah, and well, that seems to be almost an inversion of their kind of original dynamic, wasn't it? Because it was originally the Liberal Party was the main, had the main political weight behind them, and the Nats were kind of just the cookers that kind of rode on the coattails and helped them obviously boost their electoral chances, specifically in rural Australia as well.
Yep.
And the Nats were always a lot happier to engage in really cheap cultural politics.
Yeah.
But now it seems like the Nationals, is that kind of faction of the coalition, are they the ones that are now taking power?
Well, James, do you remember the breakup a few months ago?
I do remember the break. I think we covered it on the show,
We
Jordy.
did. Remember when David Littleproud basically broke up the coalition?
Yes.
Full of about, I think it was 48 hours. It was under a week. And then he came back to the table with some demands, and one of them was on net zero.
Interesting.
And the writing was on the wall there, for sure.
But, no one in Australia, everyone in Australia, probably I'd say 90% of the population of Australia is pretty happy to move towards net zero.
Yeah, so...
I'm not, that's just a rough number off the top of my head, but I think even in the more kind of conservative parts of Australia, unless you literally work in a coal mine, or on the gas fields or something, I can't imagine that you would be,
So the other day I heard a statistic, and it was something like, this was a spokesperson from the Liberal Party, and they said that almost a third of Australians oppose emissions reduction targets, or net zero.
Yeah.
And I was thinking...
Almost a third.
And then I was like, does that mean over 2/3 support it?
It's all about how you frame it, dude. It is. It's all about your framing.
That's exactly right. And some of the other polls that they've just spoken about over the past few days was that Australians would prefer cheaper electricity prices over reducing emissions. And obviously it's how you kind of word these polls.
Of course.
And saying, would you be happy to pay for emissions reduction targets, or would you prefer cheaper energy bills?
Yeah.
When you pose a question like that, you're kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to think about the bottom dollar. Obviously I want cheaper electricity bills.
Yeah.
However, what's left out of a lot of the analysis going on at the moment is that Australia, by transitioning towards net zero targets, is going to invest a lot of capital into a kind of green energy economy. Whether we invest into renewable energies or into fossil fuels, doesn't matter. The money has to be invested.
Yeah.
So as you are probably aware, a lot of our coal-fired power stations are dying. They're not dying. They're closing down. They're being decommissioned.
That's because they're not profitable as well.
And it's because they're at the end of their lifespan
Yeah.
as well. And that money is going to have to be invested into something. So I'm fond of the argument that you should invest that money into renewable technologies. Firstly, because I believe in the climate science.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a bit of a controversial opinion there, Geordie. But
Thank you. There is a consensus amongst the scientific community worldwide that climate change is real when you do something about it.
Yep.
I tend to fall into that.
Yeah, look, I agree.
Okay. If we're going to invest the money, why would we be investing into 19th century technology? Why are we going to keep burning coal? Should we just go back to steamboats?
Yeah, steam's good.
Should we have like steam-powered engines?
I think we should go for whale oil.
Yep.
Whale blubber.
Whale blubber?
Whale
Okay.
blubber for heating.
Because that's how I genuinely think a lot of the Conservatives and the Coalition think.
Yeah, no, I would agree actually but to be honest, I actually don't think there is actually a lot of thought into it. I think essentially the maximum amount of thought that goes into it is, all right, well, how do we
Play politics.
and also how do we keep making sure the people that fund us and donate to us and that we represent. When I say represent, I don't mean your average voting constituents, but the big money donors.
Gina Reinhart, the fossil fuel corporations that
Of course.
run Australian politics.
Yeah, so I think honestly they're the absolute limit of what they are planning is, well, these people need to make more money this quarter than they did last quarter.
Yeah. James, the reason I think there is also some amount of ideology in this is because the market is dictating that renewable energies are cheaper. That's where the investment's going. And where's the rest of the OECD? And not just the OECD, but other countries going? They're going towards decarbonisation.
Of course.
So why would we go back to fossil fuels if the export market that we rely so much on is moving away from fossil fuels?
It almost makes too much sense, Geordie.
Because what's funny is you get David Littleproud coming out and it's like, we don't believe in ideology, we believe in what's best for the economy. And I'm arguing, no, you don't believe what's best for the economy. Because the market is actually dictating what is going to be best for the economy and where the investment's going.
Of course.
And they're saying, you know what, no, screw that. Let's subsidise fossil fuels for another 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, of course.
It's just insane.
No, it is. Like you said, it's just a technology that's becoming more and more obsolete.
Yeah.
Like we don't even barely write on paper anymore. Everyone has computers and tablets. Yeah. That's like saying, all right, let's go back to papyrus script. Like it just seems like, just not like a smart idea.
Yeah.
But like you said, I guess this is kind of all they have.
This is all they have. And the reason I was thinking it's ideology is because, for example, James, I didn't realise this, but did you know that Barnaby Joyce, from my understanding, is a trained economist?
Is he?
Yeah, I thought he was a trained alcoholic.
I thought he was a trained alcoholic.
Yeah, he's actually an economist.
I actually respect him less now, Geordie.
No, but these people should genuinely know better. They should understand where global economic trends are going, where Australia's economy needs to be in 10, 20, 30 years. That's why I do think a lot of this comes down to playing politics and a really warped ideology of what Australia should look like and what it should be doing as part of the kind of global community.
Of course. And yeah, I think that ideology, shall we say, has really gained a lot of steam since, I'd say, Donald Trump has been elected. Because we have that real... that return of that, we're not a responsible steward of liberal global capitalism, but we're now just here for ourselves. Everyone else can go get bent, essentially. We're not going to play by international law. We're not going to abide by international agreements. We're just going to do what we want to do because that's what we want to do because we are exceptional.
Yeah.
And I think that hasn't really worked out well for the United States. Some may argue differently, but I can't see how that would work better for Australia, considering we are far less exceptional.
Definitely, that's right. And also, it's interesting, Chris Hedges has talked about this, about how the Republican Party represents the kind of oligarchic industries. And I'd argue that I think that's what the coalition is really representing. They're representing the fossil fuel interests here in Australia, the Gina Rineharts, that do care just about short-term profits, where I guess the Labor Party and I guess sane policy would try and shore up investment into the future in renewable energies in the capitalist class in Australia that actually want to say, okay, where's government policy going? Where can we safely invest money for returns over the next couple decades?
Yes, of course.
That's where renewable energies are. But the problem is that also that requires long-term thinking from not just political parties but investors as well.
Yeah, well, I think it does come down to the issue of having a two-party electoral system with an election every 4 years. Obviously, that's how our democracy works. I'd say Australia is quite institutionally democratic.
Yep.
Obviously, how our democracy, plays out. Obviously, there's media influence, bias. You have, again, the way people play politics. That can affect how democratic the outcome actually is. But I think institutionally, we are one of the most democratic nations on earth. And I think that is an issue with that, though, is that all you can think about if you're in the position of these politicians is the next 4-year span.
Yeah, definitely.
Your ambitions and your goals, whatever you truly, really do want, and the policies you do want to implement, at the end of the day, are going to potentially be hampered by the next election if you lose.
Yeah.
So you have to really be sacrificing a lot to make that happen, if that makes sense. And I guess that's where this system works really well for the oligarch class, because, hey, we just need to make sure we're making more money, for the next 4 years. And then you get that 4 years, that time rolls around. Hey, we just need to make sure we have shored up our profits the next 4 years again.
Yeah.
So I think that is a huge flaw. But unfortunately, or fortunately for us, we don't have a one-party state. Whether that's good or bad, I'll leave that up to the audience to decide.
What is funny, James, I will give it to the coalition in this one point. At least they're actually trying to be in opposition in the sense of... at least they're trying to give opposing policies, even how just insane they are.
Yeah.
At least they are opposing. Do you know what I mean?
That's it. So I guess the way they were going with Susan Lee was just like, what would it have been? A slightly more culturally conservative party with pretty much the same economic policies.
Yeah.
Or theoretically the same. I think there probably would have been a bit more cronyism involved. But again, that completely negates having an opposition. And I think this is kind of the issue that the British have faced. I think the US is just kind of its own thing. But you know what I mean? When the two parties get closer and closer together, if nothing is being delivered for the working class, then people just feel a lot more disenfranchised. I don't think we're at that stage in Australia yet. But
just for the whole of Australia, for example, over the past 10 years, as the coalition's been in power, they've done nothing on energy policy. No, I mean absolutely nothing. So I'm pretty sure it was Tony Abbott signed up to the Paris Agreement, which is like a commitment to reduce emissions and targets by 20, 40 or 50, whatever they are. Yeah. And then it was under the Morrison government that set the 2050 net zero target. He signed that into law. These are the agreements they made. But they did nothing for 10 years. Labor gets back in power at very moderate targets. Okay, by 2030, X amount of emission reductions. They've obviously still invested heavy into opening up new gas extraction, some coal extraction. But now the coalition are just like, look, we've done nothing for 10 years. Labor's in power. Do you know what could be a good idea? We'll get back into power and we'll do nothing for 10 years
for
again.
10 years,
we'll just do nothing again. Or we'll subsidise fossil fuels for another 10 years.
It truly is wild. But I think as well, the binary nature of this issue and the way that it is portrayed in the media for these politicians, it is a nuanced issue. Obviously, I'm not an energy specialist.
No, neither am I.
As you are. As you are not as well. But again, you can't have the green thing of just, all right, we need to cut all fossil fuels and invest everything. But at the same time, you can't do what the coalition wants and, all right, let's start burning whale oil again. There needs to be that balance and that long-term plan for the transition, using the word transition. Again, even the term energy transition, the coalition does say, communist, they're transitioning, it's such a triggering term. But it's a nuanced issue, and it needs to be discussed with nuance.
Yeah,
with respect.
My point is that the capital investment has to take place, whether we go 100% renewable energies, whether we go nuclear as part of a renewable mixture, whether we go back into fossil fuels. The government has to build energy infrastructure. That's going to happen. My argument is, why don't we invest that money into green, renewable energy that's reliable, and why don't we use our critical minerals and our natural resources to manufacture those things here in Australia?
Jordy, that's just too logical. Your opinion, that argument, that makes perfect sense to me. I agree. But that's far too logical for someone like David Littleproud.
Yeah, but even the Andrew Hasties who talk about wanting to bring back manufacturing to Australia, we can manufacture things here. For example, Clipsal, Schneider. There's heaps of electronic technologies that could be produced here in Australia for battery, wind, solar, etc., etc. It's not limited to that.
No.
But we could do that instead of just waging a culture war continuously.
Well, as they say, mate, you start a culture war so you don't have to engage in class war. Is the old saying goes. But no, it is interesting. But like you said as well, in terms of like the kind of dynamics of the market, for example, and you need to obviously have that investment in public infrastructure. But in Australia, like I think we have one of the highest rates of domestic home solar energy production in the world. So just things like that, like we're already kind of a third of the way there, halfway there, and we've just gotten there without anyone realising. And even the most conservative, loon will agree that, sick, I have solar on my roof. I have a very small power bill now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like everyone agrees to that. That's great. Yeah. It's great for the bottom dollar of everyone.
Yeah, but don't let like rational logic and real facts get in the way of a good culture war.
No, you're right.
Before we wrap up, I heard, is it Ben Fordham?
Ben Fordham,
the heaps just reactionary talkback radio host. Yeah. He was saying the other day, he's like, can you hear this? It was just like, only 20%, or what did he say? It was like 20% of Australia's energy infrastructure now is renewable energies. And I was like, no, it's well over 50% now. And one of the reasons prices aren't coming down, we won't open this can of worms now.
No, not now, yeah.
But we did do a segment on this probably about, this must have been over 6 months ago, close to a year now. We were talking about the privatisation of the energy infrastructure here in Australia, from like generation, transmission, distribution, retail, just chopped up like a pie to be privatised and profiteered over and over and over. And this is what we talked about. That was one of the reasons we have such high electricity costs here in Australia.
Of course.
But if you listen to the coalition, they play the ideological war that it's all to do with renewable energies.
Yeah, look, it blows the mind. In terms of, like, going as far as Ben Fordham goes, I mean, if that bloke was actually correct about the facts, he'd lose his job. Yeah. They'd fire him in a day. But no, you're absolutely right. That, again, and it's a massive subject that will affect the future of our country, and you have to treat it with nuance and respect.
So, James, a bit of a prediction here.
Yes.
The next election, the coalition are going to go to the election fighting culture wars over net zero targets, lowering electricity prices by just fossil fuels, let it rip, let it burn, and a massive anti-immigration policy.
I agree. I completely agree.
Which runs contrary to the demands and the dynamics of free market capitalism here in Australia.
It does. Wow.
And they are the party of liberal free market economics.
They are the Liberal Party. Look, it's going to be an absolute banger. I guess one thing that no one can predict the future, but one thing, like you said, we do know is that they are going to get even more reactionary coming into the next election. Whether it pays off for them or not, we'll see.
We'll be here for the rub. All right, James, let's wrap the segment up.
Like, comment, subscribe. See you later, guys.
Thanks, guys. See ya.